Carter Dalgety is a young man on the rise. He has a pedigree to be a star in the sport of harness racing. We learn a little bit more about his efforts on the track thus far, but also what he wants to achieve off the track. Carter, with your family lineage, I suppose harness racing was always going to be part of your life.
Yeah, pretty much was always going to be involved. So now that I'm riding it now, I'm loving it.
Let's talk about your grandparents and the late Jim Dalgety, who passed away last year, and his influence on the Canterbury harness racing scene. You must have gleaned so much out of him and enjoyed your time with him at the back end of his life.
Big time, yeah. There's a fair bit of pedigree there, I think. So, yeah, he was massive, probably just because I had so much to do with him. He was around here when I was older, which was awesome. And yeah, he taught me a lot with, well, not how to live your life, but a lot of very good lessons that I will take probably my whole life.
My old mate. Everyone was his old mate, but he just had such great knowledge. Of course, he was a successful trainer and driver himself. In fact, trained his last winner only about 5 or 6 years ago in Time Traveller, but he was a very good horseman and stud master and stockman. So tell me some of those lessons. Talk to me about some of the things he said to you.
Yeah, well, there's a lot, probably too many to reel off, but a few vivid memories would be when I was younger. I was always been keen on stock and probably got that from him. And I bought a few young calves and I was doing something with them or feeding them, and he come around and said I was probably doing it wrong, but he didn't tell me I was doing it wrong, but he was just saying, try this or do this. And I think that probably reminded me to show you that if you want to teach someone something, don't be very critical, just point them in the right direction. And a lot of things like that. It's the same with horses. Just his eye. If I ever had an issue with anything, a cow or a horse, you'd bring him out. And I remember thinking, geez, how do you see that, And you wish you could write everything down, but yeah, it was a hell of a brain.
On the other side of your family, Jenny Butt, who was Derek Jones's daughter, and DG, I know you would have looked up some of his history, 1,000 wins, couple of New Zealand Cups, hands down, and obviously the champion mare as well, Blossom Lady. So you got some pedigree there, haven't you?
Oh, there's a fair bit of pedigree there, yep. Hopefully the type can go through, but yeah, the Derek Jones, the things you hear about him, I sort of remember parts, but his book and I don't think you would meet someone that hasn't had a laugh with him, whether it was over a whiskey and milk or anything else. He knew someone everywhere, where it be around the world. So yeah, to have him on that side and Jim on the other side, I'm very lucky.
When he did pass, I mean, obviously you were very young, but he would be very proud of the fact that you've got involved in the business. When was your first fast work drive, and how old were you?
Oh, it's a very good question because I wish we got photos of it, but I used to sit on Dad's lap and Dexter's lap I would have been probably not even double digits, probably 7 or 8. I'm picking, and the first real one I remember was a bit of a legend, probably because his stable name was Carter, and he was a cool wee horse. But yeah, I was sitting on those laps. I was probably good resistance training for the horses having two bodies in the cart, but yeah, I was very young. But my first individual one, yeah, it has slipped me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you mentioned Dexter there, and when you're growing up, you're very impressionable, and when you've got a 10-time premiership winning driver as the driver of your dad's and now your mum and dad's horses, I suppose that influenced you to want to become a driver?
Yeah, yeah, it did. The thing, well, you're right. It's a really tricky one because he come here so young, and what I've learned through Dexter is you're not ready made when you go out there. Like, he's a freak in nature now, and his stats are just crazy. He's probably a once in a generation driver, but it just happen. He's the things. When I was younger, seeing him starting right at the bottom to look where he is now, and I try to learn all of those steps. it's quite an incredible journey, I would probably say, from the start to where you get to now. So from what I take from that is you just not get don't get too ahead of yourself, or don't get too ahead of myself, and you just got to take one step at a time, really, just like he did.
Well, you've gone from Dexter, who now plies his trade in the States, to the number one driver for the stable was then Blair Orange, who's now a five-time premiership winning driver. So you're surrounded by quality in terms of horsemanship, and learning off them has shaped your career in many ways.
Yeah, big time. It's another probably lucky thing going from Dexter straight to Blair. There's no loss there at all, and now I find it so good now being a younger fella, and just so easy to approach and learn off. And I've got a query just so open, which is really, I find it really beneficial.
Schooling. Most people I talk to on shows like this, they go there for the footy and eat their lunch, but it was a bit more than that for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I done the whole trip, which was quite rare in the harness game. I don't think anybody, well, mum or dad definitely didn't finish school. So yeah, I was pretty happy to get right through it. But my high school years, I absolutely loved, probably as you mentioned, because of rugby, and yeah, had a blast. Met a lot of great mates, and yeah, loved it.
All right, you went to St Andrews, who have a huge history in sport, and rugby was your chosen sport. What position did you play? And tell me about the game that you were involved in back in 2020.
Yeah, so I played hooker, believe it or not, back then, and so yeah, it was my last year of school, and it was the first 15 final. And St Andrews, they'd never won the UC Championship, which was the first 15 competition, and we were going pretty good this year, and we'd won a few, and we had a few really big grudge matches, and we got up in them. We beat Christ College and Boys High, huge games, and we were sort of looking all right. So we come to the final. It was at Rugby Park, and I would say we were definitely underdogs, because any person in Canterbury or any rugby person knows that Christchurch Boys High are just freakish. The amount of All Blacks I've had is just out the gate, and we come in, never won a championship, or hardly even been a final, and we were 20-0 down, just coming into half time, and we come back and we won the game. So it was the first time ever for St Andrews, and that memory, or being a part of that, is really, if not the, probably one of the most memorable moments of probably not only schooling but my life, really.
You've gone on from St Andrews and you're doing a degree. I'm not even going to pretend that I can remember what you told me a few moments ago about what you're doing. So you better reel it off for me, because there's a few letters here.
Yeah, yep. I would say rocket scientist, but no, I didn't make it into that. So I'm doing a Bachelor of Commerce, a double major in supply chain management and global business. So I'm doing that at Lincoln University. It's been a 3-year degree, and this is my last year now. So would I say it's gone quick? It probably has, but probably similar to high school. I've met so many good mates and got a lot of good memories. So yeah, I'll be pretty happy to get the certificate on the wall too.
All right, you've got your shirt on there with Fuego Collection. That's part of the reason why you're studying that way, because you've got your own clothing brand. Now, this is pretty unusual for a guy, A, of your age, but B, who's a harness driver, to have an outsourced business, if you like. So tell me a little bit about how you got into that.
Yeah, it's very left field, as you just said. So the supply chain management of my uni degree, that helps me with pretty much all of it. So that's what I'm looking to get it into. But how it sort of come about was me and my good mate Will Brownie. He's quite a creative guy, and we sort of thought, oh, we'll give this a crack into the fashion and business sort of stuff. So just designed up a few things. Started very small, just probably sitting down one day and thought about it, and then pretty much we've just taken the ball and run with it, and it's actually been a snowball effect. And it's something that once I do hopefully get my uni degree, I want to give it a really good crack and hopefully make sort of a decent thing out of it.
It's essentially streetwear, and you've got some pretty big names on some of your t-shirts out there, mate. So yeah, you're certainly having a crack at it in a different field.
Yeah, yeah, it's a pretty good thing, fashion, because everybody wears clothes, so you just got to get people to like it. So I've bought into, or a lot of different designs, things like Michael Jordan and Muhammad Ali and even Pablo Escobar, like things that are very left field, but that people are going to be interested in. So yeah, I find it's working well, and I'm sort of trying to stick along that collection. So might get a Greg O'Connor one.
Yeah, that won't sell very well. Hey, let's get back to your harness racing life and your driving, and you did something pretty unique. There's a few that have done it, but to win at your first ever race day drive, a due flirt at Oamaru for Master Horseman John Hay, not only did you win it, it was actually a dead heat, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a pretty unreal moment, that, to be honest. When I look back at it, I think probably leading into the drive, I didn't take my driver's license initially when I could first get it. I waited about probably 8 months because, you know, I wanted to be ready. I didn't want to just be thrown out there, and felt like I was ready that day, but probably, you know, sounds funny, but you never expect to win it, do you? And even a dead heat, some people never get them in their life, and somehow got one in the first go. And at Oamaru was pretty cool because the Dalgetys are from Oamaru, so yeah, it was awesome, really. And yeah, John Hay it was massive thrill, actually.
How'd you get the drive? Did he ring you or you ring him? How did that work?
I definitely rang him up. I knew the owner of the mare, Graham Bond, and he was here for a bit, and rang John, and he talked to Bondy, and I think they had a couple of options, but yeah, I was lucky enough they picked me. It was zero experience out there, and yeah, we had a lot of fun out there and got it done.
All right, you had half a dozen wins in that first period, which I think was right about when the horse birth date changed. So you got one home at Kaikoura for Bob Butt, who you've had a bit of success with, A Taste of Honey, and you won on Trixton Time for Grandad Jim. That must have been a pretty special moment back in December of 21.
Yeah, he's been a really great horse, probably a family horse, I'd call Trix, because he was the last horse that Grandpop bought at the yearling sales, and yeah, I probably never thought I'd even drive one for him, to be honest, and to actually drive one for him and to win, yeah, it was probably a feeling that you can't really describe, but yeah, probably emotional, you'd call it.
Yeah, you grabbed a double that day because you won with Labour as well for Jeff. I think it was Jeff and James by then. So yeah, and that was a big win because you beat True Fantasy and Pace and Pride and really kicked away. You know, to get a double at that stage of your career, a pretty big start.
Yeah, it was. I do remember that night very clearly because Labour, I got on with a concession. He's probably the first really good horse I drove at the races, and I remember sitting behind him, and even in the race with, as you mentioned, those other good horses, and I thought, you know, this is pretty cool. It separates the other races from driving horses like that, and yeah, I remember that very clearly. To win on Tricks and then get a double driving a really nice horse like that, it probably give me a bit of a strong bug.
Are you a goal setter? So you come off the back of that and you go into your first full year. Did you set a figure? Did you go for a number? Is that part of the Carter Dalgety makeup?
To be honest, it is. Yep, I do, because I'm a strong believer in if you don't set goals and if you don't tick them off, you never get a sense of, you know, being proud of yourself, and otherwise it would just be a long battle, you know, never being satisfied. So I think, yeah, it is important. I'll probably never really express those goals. It's probably more of a personal thing, but yeah, I do, and probably a lot of little ones to then try and get a big one. So yeah, I do.
All right, so 28 wins in your first year, was that about right?
That was a lot over
Right.
than what I thought, yeah. So yeah, 28, it was probably a significant number I thought for the first year, but yeah, I did exceed them by a fair way, yeah.
You got to travel to Australia with a couple of friends of yours, I'm going to call them friends, Krug and Republican Party, and you spent some time working in the stables over there. How much of an influence has that had on your career?
Yeah, I've been pretty lucky to do it 2 years in a row now. The first year, well, both times with Krug, but the first year was with Remember Me, and I would nearly call those trips half the making of me. A lot of responsibility, being in a foreign country, different racing, working with other people. It just opened my mind so much, and not only to have our horses, but to work with Jack Trainer the whole time. It really opened my mind to different techniques and how people do it, and just a lot of different things. And I absolutely loved it. Hence why I was lucky enough to go back again this year. And yeah, that was really cool. That I'd do it, recommend it to anybody in a heartbeat.
We talk about Krug and your special association with him. Blair was his regular pilot, and he drove him in the Hannon of last year, 2022. But then he had to make a decision, and obviously he'd won the Cup the previous year with Copy that, so it probably wasn't a hard, well, it was a hard one because he'd driven a lot for your mum and dad. When you got the opportunity the first time to drive him, and it didn't work out perfectly, were you nervous? Was it anticipation? What did it feel like?
It's yeah. When I got the drive, it was initially just filling a gap for someone else, and leading into that first drive, I'm not a big overthinker. It's easy to say, but probably because I know the horse so well, and I quite often call him my best mate because he is. I sort of felt like when I was with him, I was okay. It was a really odd feeling, but then for it to go pear-shaped like it did, that was a completely different feeling. It was sort of like the head in the gutter, and how do you come back from this? But yeah, probably not nerves, only because it was with that horse. But if it was any other horse, I'd say, yeah, I would have been a bit shaky.
You came 3 wide, and one D Butcher said, "You're starting out there, son." And then he galloped, which was very unusual for him. But you bounced back quickly. You started off 40 metres at Addington and raced really brilliantly, like right back on track. That must have been some relief for you.
Yeah, that race, and that was actually the Jim Dalgety Memorial, that race, and that was 40 metres. I think people hadn't fully written him off, but he was probably on the verge of being written off, which was fair enough. And yeah, to step away beautifully and, as you said, win quite powerfully leading into a New Zealand Cup and in the Jim Dalgety race, that was a massive buzz, that race. But yeah, not only just winning it, but probably being back on track, you'd call it.
And it confirmed that you would drive the horse, not straight away in the New Zealand Cup. And again, that race didn't pan out for you. He'd actually missed away slightly at the Cup trial from memory.
Yeah.
And then the Cup itself just didn't pan out. But it was an unusual build-up. Not only did you have to contend with being one of the youngest ever to drive in the Cup, but you had an exam that morning from memory.
Yeah, I sure did. It was, now looking back at it, I probably think, how the hell did I do it? But I got through it. I had a 3-hour exam in the morning, and it was actually a very important one, now I say it. But yeah, got through it.
Did you pass?
I passed with flying colours, which was quite great, actually. And yeah, I don't know, it might have been a good thing maybe, because I never thought about the race or even the day in the moment for probably 3 or 4 hours there. And then when I got out of it, I was sort of like, oh, you're ready to go. So I probably never got time to be nervous or nothing, but yeah, it was a hell of a day. I slept well that night.
And you had a lot of media commitments. I remember talking to you about that and trying to limit them, but yours was such a unique story that everyone wanted a piece of the Carter Dalgety story leading into the Cup, didn't they?
Well, I suppose
Suppose
so,
they
but
did.
yeah,
Yeah.
probably just, yeah, I was in the right place, right time. But being very young, I'd say that would be it. I tried not to think about being young because, you see 19-year-old rugby players playing against, 40-year-old freaks. So yeah, I try to just think you've got to earn your spot in there and just try and feel comfortable. But yeah, it was a huge moment, big build up, I would say. If I did it again, the build up is a lot bigger than the actual event. People get very carried away, and which is great. It's a lot of pump up for the sport. But yeah, now, well, older, hopefully a little bit wiser.
Yeah.
I know that the build up, you can sort of get a little bit too invested in it.
Who did you tap into for advice around dealing with the day and the race itself?
Multiple people, but one memory I'll know quite clearly, and I'll probably go it again. But we were going really good. We won that race, and we went to the Cup trial, and everything was going super. And we completely bombed the start. and I thought, oh no, he hadn't done that in a long time. And then he went out and in the cup trial for 2200, he broke the New Zealand record by 2 seconds in the cup trial. So we knew the horse was flying, but we just bombed the start. And I rang Dexter and I said, what do I do here? You know, like, he's been going super and everything. And to his credit, he'd watched everything, every race, and he said, do this. He said, pull a shorteners up a couple. And he even taught me things, or told me things to do in the prelim of the big day. And I would quite confidently say probably two of the small things he told me was the key of stepping away cleanly on the big day. And as you know, that's a huge thing if you want to try and win a cup. So yeah, him probably for a thing like that when we were in a bit of a, well, not crisis, but things were up in the air, and it was very small tweaks that got us on the right track.
Okay, things didn't work out in the Cup itself, but you went to the Summer Cup about 3 weeks later. You were in a cracking race for fourth. And then the first ever Group 1 in Southland, the Invercargill Cup, and you stepped brilliantly, got the lead. Run me through at the 800 metre mark, even though you had Self Assured and Beatty Joe and Spankum outside you, you know, it was a quality field, but that must have been an incredible feeling knowing that you had them covered even at that stage.
Yeah, it was, you're right. When we stepped beautifully, and the favourite at the time, Beatty Joe, bobbled it, and Self Assured and Spankum, these are all some of the best horses we've seen. And when I sort of got in front of them, I thought, well, this is a great start, but you've got a long way to go over 2 mile. And Krug, he's always loved small tracks, like at Redcliffe when he set the new track record. He just gets his head down and he just bores into it. So I thought he'd just love Invercargill, and obviously he's won a lot of he won his derbies from in front, and he's a very notable front runner, as we know. And when we got to the front with 2 laps to go, I'd actually never been in front with him in a race, and the feeling he gave me was just like, it was crazy. He just sort of never got tired, and even around the bend we got rolling, and I knew Self Assured was in the 1-1. He's very fast, but yeah, the way that he was getting away from them at the 100, it was, oh yeah, it was goosebumps.
Yep, family were there, Group 1 win, tick that box, and you did it with your mate.
Yeah, that was the coolest thing. To have the family there that was awesome. But the Southland people were a massive part of that, actually. They were so awesome, you know. The roar from the crowd was crazy, and coming in off the track, that Invercargill stand, it was just the applause and the standing up of people. It was something I'd never seen before, and like to be at the centre of it with, as you said, my best mate, it was yeah, quite crazy. But the Southland people deserve a lot of credit for that, making my memory so good. But yeah, to do it with Krug, that's, yeah, if you could write a story, I probably wouldn't do it any other way, really, with him.
Moving into 2023, we're in August and you're over 30 wins, so you tick that box off. Is 50 a realistic number, do you think, with 4.5 months to go?
I hope so, yeah. It's, as you know, it gets very tough probably from here on in. Coming into Cup week, a lot of good horses come out, so it is a lot harder to win races. But yeah, it's definitely, I think it's a number hopefully I can reach. But if I get close, I'd be happy. But yeah, it's the time of year I'm pretty excited to get into. You know, better ones coming out, and just watching good ones race, and yeah, be happy to get there.
You've driven some good 3-year-olds this year, or you've won some good races with them. Franco Sinatra, Coney Island Lou, Sweet Cocoa, Hoka LeBron, Watermelon Sugar, I think it's a 3-year-old as well. So yeah, you've had a good run with the 3-year-olds. Mind you, your dad and latterly your mum and dad have always had some good success with the 3-year-olds.
Yeah, they're all beautiful, handy horses. That's probably a thing. Probably just lucky mum and dad, you know, they're the trainers, and getting them to drive at the races, and they've picked up a few good wins. So yeah, I have been lucky in that way, and I probably learned a lot about different 3-year-olds now, like coming up now into the big races. You know, you got to make your decision of who are you going to take, and that'll probably be another learning curve of you're not necessarily going to get the best one every time. So yeah, that's another challenge coming forward.
Fernetti might not be a star, but I'll tell you what, you talk about roars. Explain to me how Fernetti came about, how the ownership group came about, and how great it was to win on debut.
Yeah, Fernetti was that night when I won 3, and so I bought him at the Ealing sales. I picked him out, and I more loved him because, as you know, the interest in the American racing, he's from an all-American family.
Fernetti holding, and Fernetti won it. Fernetti wins on debut and beats Creed.
Bought him cheap, and I had 5 mates come into him. I had no idea before I bought him that they were coming in, and they said, "Oh, have a crack." And it's been a couple of years. He had his first start, as he said, not long ago, and he got up and won. And there's 5 boys in the horse, but I reckon there would have been 50 of their mates there, which was just outstanding. But the real highlight of that win for me was none of them were from a racing background, but to have like my uni mates and my school mates and rugby mates come to my sport, that was really cool to show them what I do, and yeah, they absolutely loved it. And I think we talk about the bug of the game, few of them might have got it.
Well, that's what the industry needs, and those sort of moments are hard to capture. What about the future, Carter? Is driving going to be it, or are you thinking like following in your mum and dad's footsteps, or what does the future hold for Carter Dalgety?
Yeah, it's a good question. It probably is going to change every now and again, but at the moment, driving, I'm feeling very comfortable out there and loving it. It's probably the most important thing. But yeah, definitely driving. I'm probably lucky I can do a lot of the training without sort of having your name out there or nothing, but living on the place here, which is awesome. But yeah, driving, I think, giving it a big crack while I'm young will be the key, and hopefully getting not a bad CV together. And if you can look to travel around, that would be another awesome thing. But yeah, at the moment, I would say driving, and hopefully I can get this clothing going too.